I'm going to do today? Well, a couple of things. I'm not going to be presenting anything. But we have our expert panel over here is going to give you an orientation and let you know what's going on with the River Club. And they are, first up, I believe, is going to be Lisa DeGarbo, who's our former president. And then we have Tony Westerfield, who is the chair of the River Club Restoration Committee. And we have Jeff Robertson. And we have Gay Maloney. In any event, please give everybody, y'all give these folks your attention so you know what's going on. Again, I appreciate your being here, coming up on a Saturday morning and getting up and coming out. There are some refreshments in the back. I get the easy job. I get to sit down now and let them do the work. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Lisa. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to very briefly go through the history of the River Club. Anyone who has been here for a long time realizes that the River Club has always been part of Martin's Landing. In fact, it was the very first of our amenity centers to be built. But it has gone from being open to the Martin's Landing residents as part of our annual dues to being a private club, back and forth several times. Can we go to the first slide? Oh. This is the beginning of Tony's slide. Keep going one more. Okay, here it is. In 1970 is when the River Club was built, and originally when Dean Spratlin, who was the developer of Martin's Landing, he envisioned it as a private club and advertised it that way, because at the time that was something that was very attractive to new homeowners. A couple years later, Cousins Properties bought what was the undeveloped land in Martin's Landing. They developed both the Lake Pavilion and the North Pond pools. And when those were opened, they opened all three of the amenity centers to everyone in Martin's Landing, because at the time they were seeing a trend. Neighborhoods, older neighborhoods in Atlanta where it was a voluntary membership to a club or to an amenity like the pools, they were seeing as the communities got older, people's children grew up and they moved away, they stopped supporting these amenities. The neighborhoods then couldn't support them, couldn't sustain them, were closing them down, and then we're losing home values and the neighborhoods were stagnating. Let's go to the next. In the 1980s, sometime in the mid-1980s, the club went under separate management. The foundation was not controlling it, and it became a private club again. If you wanted to join and use the facilities down at the river, you had to pay an additional membership fee. During those years, the River Club built up a very loyal and close-knit family of outside members. In 2004 and 2005, the board had started a planning study, started the master plan, looking at how the community could be developed, improved, and enhanced. And in that time, they looked at all the different amenity centers, and the planners suggested that we needed to have all three of those open to all Martin's Landing residents. With 1,965 homes, 3 amenity centers were appropriate. So at that time, the board negotiated to get that amenity back for us and determined that for Martin's Landing, everyone needed to be able to have free and open access to the River Club. And for the last 5 years, we have. During those first few years, even though we had always been able to rent the River Club and use it for some community events, it kicked into high gear once we got it back. We've developed quite a few social events based on using that club because it is the one and only space that we have that can hold a fairly large amount of people. It's also the only space we have that's handicapped accessible. The meeting room over at the Lake Pavilion, where we have a lot of our committee meetings and such, we have stairs. We do not have an elevator. So the River Club has functioned as our only true community space for everyone in Martin's Landing. You can see we did a lot of social events. We had other community planning events where we talked about Centennial Walk and the Roswell East Project, and it became a real multi-use space for everyone, aside from just serving the pool. You can go on. From 2008 to 2009, I wanted to do a study. We still had the calendars of every event that happened at the River Club. So taking a look at that and building on the anecdotal evidence from the Recreation Committee and our on-site property manager, I learned a few things. One, this has become our most popular pool of all. That's partly because of the configuration. You have a center section that's free for swimming, a separate dive well, and then another area with this wide, shallow area for the kids to play in. That pool has become the pool of choice for families with small children. In 2 years, in 2008 and 2009, we had 123 events that were scheduled to happen at the River Club. Unfortunately, in both 2008 and 2009, we had problems down there. In 2008, because of the age of the building and the way it was constructed, we had pipes burst inside the slab. It took us a couple months to get those settled. We ended up with septic problems we discovered because of that, and we were closed down for 3 months. And then in 2009, of course, we had the flood in September, so we lost 9 months there, 3 months there. You want to go ahead? Looking at the different kind of events that we have, you can see that we've really started to use this. The board set up a policy where every neighborhood HOA had 1 or 2 free rentals every year. And in that time, 13 of our different neighborhoods had meetings or parties at the River Club. We used it for 12 different social events in Martin's Landing. Some of these things are things we could not do anywhere else. The chili cook-off, the karaoke, the pig roast and such. Our clubs, the Dolphins swim team, the adult swim team, and some of the tennis teams use it as their banquet center. We've had 68 private rentals, and those comprise mostly rentals of the clubhouse, but also the gazebo area. In looking at the folks that used that, North Pond was actually the subdivision that used it the most. There were 21 rentals, and those were all private parties that folks from within North Pond had. North Shore and South Shore each had 16 events, and they were a mixture of private parties and neighborhood events and meetings. Six Branches with 11, Parkside 6, East Hillside, Lakeview, and then the Landings townhomes and the condos with no rentals. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony now. That gives you a picture of what's happened over the last few years up until our very last rental on September 19th, 2009.
We'll probably be able to go over more of those details as the presentation continues as well. Scott, you can probably flip through a couple slides here. Obviously, this is what happened back in last September. And a little closer, can you hear me there? And after this happened, right after this happened, the board of directors asked the Planning and Design Committee to put together a team to find out what the next steps we needed to take to renovate our clubhouse. So we put together a team, we call it the River Club Restoration Committee, and we immediately realized that we were faced with a number of challenges redeveloping in a floodplain along the river corridor. We knew we needed to call in a little backup in the form of an architecture and engineering team. So we pulled together all the historical information we had on this project, much of which Lisa went into. Put that together with an RFP, a request for a proposal, and which is basically an outline of what we were looking for from an architect, something they could bid and make a proposal upon. And found 4 very qualified architecture and engineering firms local to the Roswell area. We interviewed all the candidates. We looked at their portfolios. We basically vetted the candidates for a couple weeks and then made a final decision to go with architect Zach Henderson for a number of reasons. Zach has worked on projects in the Roswell area for about 40 years. He has a lot of experience. He also had a very competitive bid. He took a very personal liking to this project, had a lot of passion for it, which is a good thing to find from a principal in charge and a designer of an architecture firm. So the first thing we did when we got together with Zach as a team is we decided we needed to find out what we could do. We had no idea at this time that the city of Roswell The ARC, the Architectural Regional Commission, other jurisdictions would even be responsive to us rebuilding in the river corridor. So, and we also set a goal to have this rebuilt in time for the opening of the next pool season, May 2011, next summer. So meanwhile, while Zach was starting his due diligence research at the city, the committee asked the board of directors and the presidents of all the neighborhoods associations to ask all of you what you were interested in seeing in your River Club renovation. And that information, that was back in December. And that information trickled in over the next couple months. And we fed that to Zach, that his committee decided what we could incorporate in a schematic design. And we came up with a plan that was presented to the board of directors at the end of February. And that was a very large plan. And it allowed us, we were all pleasantly surprised that the city of Roswell was, and the other jurisdictions were going to allow us to do a lot with our building design, and which gave us a lot of latitude to decide, okay, if it's not this big, maybe we can shrink it down to this size, a lot of flexibility. And the board embraced that, but they also said we need to see some options. So we decided to come back with a smaller option A and a medium-sized option B, and we called the larger plan option C. You can flip to a couple more. One more. There you go. And that's a rendering of the larger option C, which gives you an idea of the sort of look and feel, kind of a lodge-like feel, in our opinion, and from a lot of the feedback we received from homeowners, that's the kind of building that would be most appropriate down at the river, as opposed to, say, a big plantation-style building. But this committee was kicked off in response to the River Club being pretty much destroyed by the flood. So we came back with 3 options, a small, medium, and large, and we'll go through the plans in just a minute, and you see some of the boards over there, but those were presented at the annual meeting. And since that time, we've tried to push the project forward as much as we can because no final decisions have been made in terms of the footprint size and how much money is going to be spent. So we pursued something that's called the entitlement process with the city of Roswell, where we took what we had on paper in terms of a schematic floor plan and coupled that with a more detailed site plan and civil engineering drawing layout. And presented that to the city of Roswell Design Review Board, and they approved what we have proposed so far on July 6th. And basically what that buys us is a couple months lead time on the permitting process, which can be kind of linear. So. And that entitlement process is good for about a year. So we're that much further down the road, but we still have a long way to go in terms of actually putting together documents to be permitted and bid upon and that sort of thing. This is what we have on paper so far. This is obviously the River Club site. That's this blue rectangle right here represents the existing footprint of the building that's no longer usable. The pool right here, here's the river, the tennis clubs over here, and Riverside Road's over here. One thing you notice immediately is we've added more parking spaces in order to solve some non-permeable issues where we have runoff issues, and we've shortened our driveway here and created a larger turnaround for emergency vehicles. And we've also relocated the playground equipment, which is down in the drainage ditch over here inside the fenced area around the pool, and added some landscape screening between the River Club and Winfield Gables. Next slide. A little closer, you see that, actually it's kind of hard to see under here, but there's actually a covered area right here where you pull up so you can walk under a covered area into the entrance of either one of the proposals, the yellow being the option A, the smaller plan, which is similar in footprint to the existing River Club. It's more square, less rectangular. The orange is option B, and green is option C, the largest plan. And this is the pathway to either the pool, directly to the pool, which is a little different than we had before. Usually, beforehand, you had to go through the River Club to get to the pool. Now you have a separate entrance, or you can enter right into here, which is our next slide. So this is our pathway. We basically taken the plan and we spun it around this way. And again, you either go directly to the pool, or you can take a separate entrance into what we call the covered pavilion area. And this covered pavilion area is basically one of the things we saw early on in this project was we had to raise this building up off the ground a minimum of 4 feet to keep it from being flooded by future potential 100-year flood event.